Modern food is built on comfort. We browse aisles looking for specific flavors, perfect textures, and exact nutritional profiles. But strip all of that away, and the human definition of a meal changes violently. When a regional environment collapses, when the rains stop, the soil turns to dust, and local livestock vanishes, a biological clock starts ticking. The landscape forcefully empties out, stranding populations with whatever limited supplies they have locked in their pantries. The immediate response to this scarcity is to stretch normalcy. People enter phase 1 of starvation, pulling materials like ground tree bark and wood sawdust into their kitchens. They mix these rough powders with their last few ounces of precious wheat flour, trying to simulate a standard bake. The resulting loaves mimic the shape and texture of real baking, but they offer zero actual caloric value. The wood dust acts purely as physical bulk, actively tearing at the stomach lining and damaging the digestive tract as it forces its way through the body. Fresh produce is quickly replaced by blackened, foul-smelling potatoes dug out of the dirt long after they've spoiled. Eating this rot carries a massive risk of severe, often fatal food poisoning. But starving people make a calculated gamble. The possibility of sickness tomorrow is preferable to the absolute certainty of starving today. These initial compromises are the final echoes of a normal diet. They are desperate rations marking the end of traditional eating, triggering the exact moment the human body begins its irreversible breakdown. When the fields are completely barren, humans are pushed into phase 2. They abandon agriculture entirely and turn to the absolute fringes of nature, pulling up wild weeds and rough grasses to boil down anything that is biologically active. This wild foraging requires dangerous guesswork. People scavenge through forests, consuming unknown mushrooms, risking toxic ingestion with practically zero botanical knowledge. Others subject themselves to intense physical pain, harvesting stinging nettles with their bare hands to gather a plant that becomes edible only after heavy boiling. The definition of a successful hunt devolves as rapidly as the crops fail. With domestic livestock completely wiped out, humans target pests. Slugs, snails, and rats are trapped and consumed quickly, valued entirely for their raw protein regardless of the disgust they usually provoke. To get anything else, the physical labor intensifies. Scavengers gather completely stripped animal bones and violently crack them open and boil them for days on end. They are trying to coax out microscopic beads of fat and trace minerals hidden deep within the marrow. The result is a thin, almost clear, oily liquid. It provides practically zero real caloric energy, yielding just enough raw minerals to keep basic organ functions firing for a few more hours. Humans at this stage are operating entirely on biological momentum. They are expending massive amounts of physical labor for microscopic fractional calories, doing everything possible to keep their bodies moving. Eventually, the stomach empties completely, triggering phase 3. This is a severe physiological breaking point, where the agonizing physical pain of stomach cramps overrides the brain's logical pursuit of actual nutrition. Starving humans begin tricking their own biology. They stop looking for calories and start searching for heavy, dense materials that can sit in the gut and create the physical illusion of a full stomach. Old leather boots, horse tack, and even the dry glue holding shoes together are chopped apart and boiled for hours. The goal is to melt them down into a thick, chewable gelatin that pacifies hunger pangs while offering zero sustenance. When personal items are exhausted, people begin consuming the house itself. Sheets of newspaper are soaked in water and boiled until the toxic ink bleeds out, allowing the wet paper bulk to be swallowed whole. They strip the walls, aggressively peeling off old sheets of wallpaper to scrape at the underlying starch paste, boiling it down into a thick, flavorless soup. They even melt down household candles. Because older candles were made from animal fat tallow, the wax provides a heavy, greasy burst of energy that is incredibly difficult for a fragile, starving stomach to process. Phase 3 represents a total psychological fracture. Humans willingly poison their own digestive tracts with thick, indigestible debris simply to silence the screaming biological alarms of starvation. When the house is completely consumed, the search spills into the gutters for phase 4. Societal norms collapse entirely as families dig through municipal waste bins looking for half-burnt, discarded scraps of meat. Any animal found already dead on the side of the road is immediately taken and cooked. The meat is almost certainly riddled with disease, but when starvation is an absolute, unavoidable certainty, any level of infection becomes an acceptable risk. In the absolute bleakest corners of history, people are reduced to boiling old cloth rags just to drink the dirty, tepid water left behind, or wandering through graveyards to dig up recent food offerings left for the dead. But the final item on this desperate list is simply nothing. The harsh historical reality is that for millions, the weeds ran out, the bark was stripped bare, and they simply ran out of time. Starvation was always a guaranteed conclusion. These extreme survival tactics were never sustainable strategies. They were violent, desperate negotiations meant only to buy a few extra days of life. The next time you open your pantry and choose what you want to eat, consider the reality of having no choice at all. The items on this list were never meant to be meals. They are dark, historical monuments to the unyielding human will to exist at any absolute cost.